Welcome, everyone. As we learn the amazing limud of Chok Yisrael for Parshas Vayakheil, Yom Rishon, the first day. Vayakheil Moshe es kol hadas bnei Yisrael, and Moshe Rabbeinu told all of Klal Yisrael to gather. Vayomer aleim, and he said to them, Eila advam, these are the matters asher tziva Hashem, which Hashem instructed that should be done. The Uknash Moshe Yaskol Knishta Bnei Yisrael Ma'amalain Ilan Piskamai the packet on Nelamebad Yasain. Rashi says Vayakheil Moshe, not that he actually gathered them, but he told them to gather. L'machris Yom Kippurim, after Yom Kippur, the day after Yom Kippur, Kishiyerid Menahar, when he came down from the mountain, V'uloshin Hifil, it's causative. She'ena oisef hanoshim yadayim. He didn't cause the people to gather. I mean, he didn't actually gather the people with his hands. Eloheim ne'esafin al pi diburo. They gathered because of his command. V'targumai va'achnash. He caused them to gather. Sheishes yom te'asim malacha, for 6 days you should do work. V'yom hashvi, and the 7th day yeh lechem kodesh. It should be for you a holy Shabbos Shabbosam LaHashem. It's a holy day for Hashem. Whoever does work on the Shabbos, you should die. Shita Yomin Tisaved Avidit Uviyim Shvi'ah Yehei L'chaim Kutcha Shabsa Kodamari Noy Kol Diyavid Bei Evidita Yiskatel. Rashi tells us Sheishes Yomim. Why does it say Shabbos here? Hiktim Lahem Ashar Shabbos. It prefaces the warning to keep Shabbos l'tziva melechas hamishkan, to the construction of the Mishkan. Leimer, to tell us she'ein deiches Shabbos, that the construction of the Mishkan does not push away the Shabbos, does not supersede the Shabbos. Lo yisavaru eish b'chol meish v'yiseichem. You should not kindle a fire in all your places of dwelling. B'yom HaShabbos, on the Shabbos day, lo yisavaru neishasa b'yom moisvaneichain b'chol moisvaneichain b'yom HaShabbos. Rashi says, why does it? There's 39 malachas. Why does it single out Havara? So Rashi says, lo yisavaru eish yesh mirabbi seinu. I mean, there's some of our rabbis that said Havara l'lav yotzah. So it comes to tell us that the lav of making a fire is not a Isamisa, but only an Isser Lav. So it comes to tell us that if you do the 39 malachis in one state of unawareness, you knew that it was Shabbos, but you forgot that sewing was us, you forgot that making a fire was us, you forgot that building was us, that you're chayiv a separate chatas for each one, a separate sin offering for each one. Moshe said to all of the assemblage of Bnei Yisrael, saying, this is the matter, Asher Tziva Hashem, that Hashem instructed me, Leimar, to tell you. As Rashi explains, Hashem commanded me, Leimar lechem, to tell you. And the pasuk continues, they should take from you an offering to Hashem. Kol nediv libai, anyone whose heart stirred him to be generous. Yivi'as trumas Hashem, should bring the offering to Hashem, zav v'chesef and chayshis, from gold, silver, and copper. Savu minchan afreshusa kadam adonai, called Yisrael libai yase afreshusa kadam adonai dava v'kaspa nechavsha. Says Rashi, what does it mean nediv libai? Al Shem Shalibai Nodvai, since his heart stirred him to be generous, Kari Nediv Lev, it's called generous of heart. Farpirashti, and Rashi says, I already explained Nidvas HaMishkan, the dedications to the Mishkan and Malachta and its work, but Makam Tzavasam, where it was initially commanded. And the pasuk finishes off, Usecheles V'argaman, and they also gave the bluish, greenish wool, dyed wool, v'agaman, the purple wool, v'salashani, the scarlet wool, v'sheish, linen, v'izim, and the goat's hair. Now, we learn from Malachim where it describes the Shlomo HaMelech's building the Beis HaMikdash. Now, in front of the Ulam, the antechamber of the Beis HaMikdash, the Bayis Rishon, there were 2 huge pillars of copper, which was, especially in olden days, this was a very, very sophisticated piece of workmanship, and it was done by Hiram, who was an expert at the Malacha of copper. Vayishlach HaMelech Shlomo, and King Shlomo sent, Vayikach es Chiram, and he took Chiram mitzar, from Tsar, Ben Isha Almanash, he was the son of a widow who was from the Shevet of Dan, Ben Ish Almanahu, Mimate Naphtali, his father came from Naphtali, Va'aviv Ish Tsari, and his father lived in Tsar, Choresh Nechashes, his father, and he was a copper craftsman, Vayamali Esa Chachma, and Hashem filled him with wisdom, Vesatfuna, not only the wisdom to work copper, but to understand and to apply from the wisdom that he had. Vesadas, and he was given Ruach HaKodesh, Lasais Kol Malacha, to do all of the work, Panachoshes, with copper. Vayavoy El HaMelech Shlomo, came to King Shlomo, V'yases Kol Malachtai, and he did all the work. Vayotzer Eshneho Amudim, and he crafted the two huge pillars. One was known as Yachin and one was known as Bayaz, Nechoshes of copper, that was in the front of the Ulam. Shmeina Esrei Amma Koimas Ha'amid Ha'echad, 18 Amas high was the height of one pillar, that was the height. The Chut Shteim Esrei, and its circumference was Shteim Esrei, that means the Chut Shteim Esrei Amma Yosef Esrei Amid, and like a thread or a ribbon with 12 Amas encircled Esa Amid Hasheni. In other words, he built the first pillar, a height of 18, and the second pillar, and that second pillar, as well as the first, had a circumference of 12 Amas. So these were huge, massive pillars. Ushtei Kaisaris Asa, and he made two crowns, Laseis al Roshei Amodim, to put on the top of the pillars, Mutzak Nechoshes, cast it out of copper, Chamesh Amas Kaimas HaKaisaris Echos, 5 Amas was the height of one of the crowns on one of the pillars, Chamesh Amas Kaimas HaKaisaris Hashenis, and the other crown on the other pillar was also 5 Amas high. Now these pillars were an interesting construction. In Divrei Hayamim, it tells us that there were actually two bowls. One bowl was, the opening was facing up, and the other bowl, the opening went on top of it, and that's how the crowns were made. And svachim, and there was a type of netting, like a covering, maise svacha, made out of wicker, Gedilim, and there was also embroidered chains, Gedilim, twisted, not embroidered, it's twisted, Maise Shar Shirois, twisted chains, like Kaisaris, which decorated the crowns, Asher al Rosh Amudim, on the top of these two immense pillars at the front of the Ulan of the Bayis Rishon. Shivala Kaisaris Echas, there was like 7 wicker designs for the one crown, Vishivala Kaisaris Hashenis, and 7 for the other crown. Vayasas Amudim, and he fashioned these pillars, Ushnei Turim, and 2 rows, Saviv Ala Svocha Ha'echas, there were pomegranates. These were pomegranates of brass that went around the netting of wicker, L'chaso, he says, Kaisaris, which covered the crowns, Asher al Rosh Harimonim. Now, this would mean that the pomegranates ran in the middle of the 2 bowls. So the upper bowl was on top of these pomegranates. V'chein also like Kaisaris Hashenis, and he also made these encircled brass pomegranates for the second pillar as well. And now Shlomo HaMelech tells us in Mishlei, Taivas Adam, the desire of man, what he wants from his fellow, is chastai, is the kindness that he receives from his fellow. The toiv rush, and therefore a person would rather deal with a poor person that's honest, may ish kazav, than even a wealthy, deceitful person. Yiras Hashem, if one has fear of Hashem, and therefore avoid sin, l'chaim, that will give him life, like another pasuk says, Yiras Hashem Toisif Yamim. And therefore, if a person fears Hashem and stays away from evil, then v'savei ayolin, he will lie down satisfied, and bal yipakid ra, and he won't be visited by evil. Very interesting. Next pasuk. Toman otzel yodai batzalachas. And a cold day, after the pot is taken off the fire and it's emptied, the lazy person puts his hand by the pot in order to warm him, and he sits there the whole day and doesn't go and bother to go to work, and gamal piu lo yeshivena, he won't have anything to bring his hand back to his mouth to eat, because he doesn't get up. He's just lazy, and he's just enjoying the warmth, and he's so lazy that he doesn't bring home anything for himself to eat. Late stake, the scoffer is smitten, upesi yarin. The simple person becomes wise. So the Rishonim tell us this is a reference to Yisro, how he saw Paro was smitten, and therefore Yisro was Megayer. And this is in general, people see the scoffer smitten, and then they learn what to avoid. They see people, they drive drunk, and they get into accidents. They see people lying and caught in their lies and get, fired from their job. They see people talking in shul and other people stay away from them. They see people that neglect taking care of the children, and the children suffer. So, and a person sees the casualties of the lets, and he becomes wise and knows what to avoid. Vayakheil l'navain, when you give rebuke to an understanding person, yavin das, that person will gain and understand knowledge. This is a very sorry pasuk. Mishaded of and yavriach ein. The father has ruin, and the mother runs away because of a ben mevish umachbir, because of a child that's bad and brings them disgrace. It affects the father. Father gets ruined, and the mother runs away in shame because of the child that brings disgrace to them. Chedal bini, refrain my son, from what it says at the end of the pasuk, lishgoiz me imrei das, to stray from words of knowledge. Rather, chedal bini, refrain from that. Lishmoya musar. Instead, make sure to listen to rebuke, to listen to chastisements, to listen to criticism. Refrain lishgois me imrei das. Refrain from erring, from listening to words of chachma and understanding. And now we learn the fifth parak of Demai. Halakech min anachtam. If somebody buys from a baker who doesn't have a very big markup, so therefore we put the obligation on the buyer to take the challah and to take the demai. Keitzad hu ma'aser. How does he do the meiser? So he has to basically take off the trumas meiser, which is 10% of 10%, which is 1/100th of the total, and he has to take off also the truma, which is we know 1/50th. So out of 100, it's 2/100ths. So basically, he has to give 3/100ths. So if he I'm getting ahead of myself. Here we're talking about where it's demai. You don't take truma from demai. So he has to take the trumas meiser, which is 1/100th, and he has to take the challah. So noitel kidei trumas meiser v'challah. He has to take off trumas meiser and challah. V'omer, what does he say? The challah is 1/48th of the loaf, and the meiser, the trumas meiser is 1/100th. V'omer echad mimeya mimashi yeshkan. He says 100th of the dough over here. Hare b'tzad zeh meiser. It's on the side mentally as meiser, because the trumas meiser is coming from the meiser. Ushar meiser samachloi, and the other 9/10 of the meiser is next to it. Zesha is sisi meiser, so this total mass that I made meiser, also trumas meiser olav. The 100th that I set aside at the end should be the trumas meiser on it. And then Vashar, and whatever else is over here, Chala, I remove 1/48 as Chala. Now, Zesha sees Maisa, Asi Trumas Maisa, Allah Vashar Chala. Or Maisa Sheni, and then in the first, second, fourth, and fifth year, when he has to take off Maisa Sheni, he says the Maisa Sheni is either B'tzvainai on the north of the dough, or Bedromo, or the south of the dough, and then he redeems it with money, because the Maisa Sheni goes on money to be taken up to Yerushalayim, or Mechulul ala Mois. Now, here we're not talking about where you buy from a Amo Aretz, but here we're talking about just a person that wants to take off from definite, from Tevel. He wants to take off the Truma and the Trumas Meiser. So remember, if he has 100, the Truma, which Mida Baininus is a 50th, is 200ths, and the Trumas Meiser is 100th. So a right to lahafrish Trumas Meiser kachas, if he wants to separate the Truma and the Trumas Meiser as one, noitel echad mishloishim v'shalosh shlish, he takes 133 and a third of the 100, which is 300ths. That's another way of saying 300ths. V'aymer echad b'meya mimashi yesh kan, 100ths of what's here. Hari zeh b'tzad, hari zeh, here it is, and b'tzad zeh chulin, and next to it is chulin. V'ashar, and the other 2/3, truma alako. I'm sorry, the other 200ths. The other 200ths is truma for everything, because remember, 200ths is 1/50th, and Mida Baininus is 1/50th. Then umeya chulin sheyesh kan, the 100th over here of chulin, harizeh b'tzad zeh meiser. It should be on this side meiser. The 100th left, it should be meiser. Ushar meiser samachloi, and the other 900ths of the meiser rishon is next to it. And then this meiser, this 100 should be trumas meiser. Zesha sisi meiser, this 100th that I declared meiser, also trumas meiser, should be trumas meiser. And then meiser sheni, if it's in the second, first, second, fourth, and fifth year, the meiser sheni should either be b'tzvainai or b'draimai, to the north or the south, or mechulul alamos, and it's redeemed on the money. Halakach min hanachtam. Now here's a problem. Let's say Nachman is buying from a baker, but the problem is maybe the baker got his supplies from different suppliers, and one of them, the Amo Aretz gave already Maisa, because Rav Amaratzim are Aser name, and the other one it didn't. And then we would have a problem that you're taking min achiyav al aptur or min aptur al achiyav. So halakech min anachtam Meiser min achama al tzeinenes, as you could even be ma'aser from the hot batch onto a cold batch, umin tzeinenes al achama, or from a cold batch on a hot batch. Why? And even afilu mitipusim harba, even if it's from different molds, right? Not only if it was from different days, but even from different molds. Because Rameir says that we're not afraid that the baker has many suppliers. Divrei Rameir. Rabbi Yehuda says that if it's hot and cold, so the cold one was from another day, we say the wheat from yesterday was from a different supplier, and maybe one took Maisa and one didn't. But while the hot ones from today are so maybe one took off Maisa and therefore it's Patur, and one didn't, it's Menachayev, and you can't be Ma'asim Mena Chiyav al Patur or Mena Patur al Chiyav. Reb Shimon Reb Shimon adds that even if they're both hot, But if it's in different molds, we have to worry because maybe it's from different suppliers. But umatir b'challah, since the chiyuv of challah is only when you make the dough, so that happens by you, so therefore you could take it from all of it together. Halakech min hapalter. Now here, this is a bread shop. Now a bread shop, he buys from bakers, and he sells them, little batches at a time. So there, ma'aser mikol tfus u'tfus. You have to take off separately ma'aser from every mold, because we consider that different bakers use different molds. Divrei Meir. Rabbi Yehuda me'achas halakol. Rabbi Yehuda says he holds that the bread shop usually uses the same supplier. Moed Rabbi Yehuda b'leikech min manpul. Now the manpul buys from a lot of different suppliers. So if you bought from a different supplier, there he has to take off meiser from each shape differently because he buys from a lot of different suppliers. Now, what about if you buy from a poor person? Now, the poor person gets stuff from a lot of people. So, aloikech min ha'ani. Or if the ani himself wants to take off meiser, and he got from a lot of different people, he was given pieces of bread or cakes of figs from a lot of different people. He has to take off meiser separately from each batch. However, if you're talking about dates or dried figs, then even if he got it from, let's say, 3 different people, bolel v'noitel, he makes a mash out of it and mixes them all properly, and then he could take off meiser, because we say that since it's mixed thoroughly, you get a representation of each one evenly. Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda says, Amos, when could you do this? Bizman shamatan meruba, where you got an equal amount from each person. But when you got different amounts from different people, so when you mix them together, you don't know if you're going to have the correct representation, then you have to take off ma'aser from each batch separately. If you buy from a wholesaler, and you buy from him again, you can't take ma'aser from one or the other, because we say that maybe he got it from different suppliers. The wholesaler might have gotten it from different farmers. Even if you buy from the same container, you bought once from the container and you bought grain from the same container, but maybe in the interim the container emptied out and was filled up from a different supplier. Even if it's from the same species of grain. However, the supplier can say, Mishel Echadheim, that I got them all from the same farmer, and then you could take one off from itself. If you buy from a farmer, who we assume sells his own stuff, even if you buy from his second time, even if it comes from 2 different baskets, because we assume that it's all his grain. Even if the farmer has farms in 2 different cities. A homeowner that sells vegetables in the marketplace, if it always comes from his garden, so you could take one for everything, because it comes from the same person. But if they come from other gardens, then each time you buy, you have to take up ma'aser separately. If you buy untithed produce from 2 different places, now here it's tevel, it's untithed produce, but you buy it from 2 different places. So what? It's untithed. So ma'asim is alzeh. You could take off ma'aser one from another. Afal pisha amru, even though you shouldn't infer from this that you're allowed to sell untied produce. You can't sell tevel unless there's a need. This is a special need if somebody's chulin and tevel got mixed up together, so they might need tevel to solve the problem. You could take off ma'aser from the crops of Yisrael for crops that you bought from a guy, because the Tana of our Mishnah holds ein kinyan le'guy la'akam la'avkia es ha'aretz midei ma'aser. So therefore, even though it belonged to a guy, it still has a chiyuv of ma'aser. Or mishel oivik, you could take off that which you bought from a guy al shel Yisrael for that which belongs to Yisrael, because as we said, since the guy doesn't have a kinyan to remove the chiyuv of ma'aser, they're both min hachayev al hachayev. Also, mishel Yisrael al shel kusim. You could take from Yisrael for kusim, because the kusim, although this man Yama holds the gerei emes, but the kusim, although they took off ma'aser for what they eat, they're not careful to take off ma'aser what they sell you. So therefore, it's considered vadei tevel and it's vadei chiyuv. And likewise, mishel kusim al shel kusim. You could take off from kusim that you buy from kusim, because all of them do not take off ma'aser. Rebbe Eliezer oisim mishel kusim al shel kusim, and also from Yisrael on kusim, because he says some kusim do take off ma'aser from what. Rebbe Eliezer oisim mishel kusim al shel kusim. Why? Because Rebbe Eliezer is afraid that maybe he took off ma'aser because he thought he was keeping it, and then he decided to sell it. So you have to worry that it might be patur, and therefore you can't take off one from another. Otzitz nakiv, a perforated flower pot is considered, that which grows in a perforated flower pot is considered like it's growing from the ground. So otzitz nakiv hari zeka oretz, it's like it's growing from the ground. Torah me oretz alo otzitz nakiv, therefore if you take off truma from that which grew from the ground, from that which grew from a perforated flower pot, or me otzitz nakiv, you took off from a perforated flower pot alo oretz, from that which grew on the ground, since they're both chayiv, it's good, truma so truma, that's perfectly okay. However, mishe'ena nakiv ala nakiv, if you took off from something that wasn't perforated, now something that wasn't perforated is only chayiv midrabanan. So if you took off from something that wasn't perforated for something that was perforated, so we say it's truma, but you got to do it again. The yaz of yitram, since midaraisa, it's not chayiv. Mina nakiv al she'ena nakiv, if you took from something that was perforated, which has a chiyuv, for that which is non-perforated, you got to give it to the kohen, but since you took it min achiyuv ala p'tur midaraisa, the kohen has to take off trumas and maises from it from another place. Truma, the kohen shouldn't eat it trumas maises until he takes off from it trumas and maises. Torah min adamai ala damai. If you took truma from one damai or another for another damai, or min adamai ala vadai. So here you took from a suffix, the demai the Hamaretz might not have given, and therefore it was chayiv, but he might have given, and that would be p'tur, so it's a suffix. Or midmai alavadai, again it's a suffix. Truma, what you gave is truma, but you have to take off truma again from another place, which is chayiv, yaz of yitram. Min avadai aladmai, if you took off from that which is vadai for demai, now, the demai might be tevel because the Hamaretz might not have given ma'aser, but it might be p'tur. So truma, you give it to the kohen. It's truma. However, the kohen can't eat it until he takes off trumas and ma'aser from elsewhere. And now we learn from the Gemara in Brachos. As we know, it's the first day of the week, so that's Seder Zram, which in the Gemara is Brachos. Tani Rav Avadia kamei to Rava. Rav Avadia taught before Rava. V'limaditem, it says in the pasuk v'limaditem, sheyelehei limud chatam. Your learning should be whole. That means that you shouldn't swallow letters. Sheyiten revach bein advekim. You should leave place between psukim, between words that end and start with the same letter. Like, for example, on the Rava Basrei, like Rava gave as an example, he said after him, Kegain al levavecha, al levavchem, bechol levavecha, bechol levavcha, bechol levavchem, esev besodcha. That's even though one is a vase and one is a base. It's a chiddush. Va'avaditem mehera. Hakonaf psil. Again, that's a chiddush. Eschem me'eretz. Amr Chama B'Reb Chanina Kolakar Kriyishma. Whoever says Kriyishma would take Ba'Yisiyah, and he's careful with his letters, and he doesn't say it in the heat. He's in a rush. He's in the heat. Mitzanan lo Gehenim. They cool off Gehenim for him. Shenemar B'Fareis Shakai Malachim. When Hashem scatters the kings, Tashleg B'Tzalmon. It will be snowing in Salmon. Now, we darshan this to mean Al Tikre B'Fares, when Hashem spreads, Ela B'Ferish. When you express it properly, Al Tikre B'Tzalmon, Ela B'Tzalmon. Hashem will chill, like the snow, Hashem will chill the shadow of death, which is Gehenna. In the pasuk, why does it say tents next to rivers? They would stretch out like rivers, like gardens by the sea. They will be pitched like tents. So why does it say rivers and tents together? Just like rivers, purify a person from tumatara. So also the oil of Torah, the oil of Torah, the tent of Torah, tilts a person from the scales of guilt to the scales of merit. If you say Shema backwards, you're not Yotzi. Rabbi Lazar was getting married, so they were preparing the chuppah for Rabbi Lazar. So Rabbi Lazar says, while you're doing this for me, I'll go and listen to something in the yeshiva, and I'll come back and I'll tell it to you. He found the Tana, the Ketani Kamed Rabbi Vayakheil, Kara Vita, if you were saying Kriyishma, you made a mistake. You don't know in the paragraph, you don't remember where you made the mistake. The Emtza Perik, in the middle of the chapter, Yazel L'Rosh, go to the beginning of that chapter. Being Perik L'Perik, you know you were between one chapter and another. You don't know which one. Yazel L'Perik Rishon, you return to Vayim Shemaya. Being Ksiva L'Ksiva, you're not sure if you were by the Chsaftam in the first parasha or the Chsaftam in the second parasha. Yazel L'Ksiva Rishon, you go back to the first parasha. But if you already said L'man Yirbi Yemechem, you could assume that you were at the Ksaftam of the second parasha of Vayim Shemaya. Your normal way of praying led you to there, and therefore you could assume, even though you're not sure, that you said already the second parasha. Also, Rav Elazar came and told this back to Rabbi and Rabasi. They said to him, if we only came to hear this from you, dayenu, this would be enough. And now we learn a very esoteric Zaya Barchatad Neilin Melchanam Shakom Nibidvaro. Chume Itchem Trumal Hashem. They will take from you an offering for Hashem. The itema the kashem milah, who says the Zohar, maybe you'll say it's difficult to give. It is difficult to part with money. Kol nediv libay, anyone whose heart stirs him to do the right thing, yivi eha. Hashem will help you and give you the strength to bring it. Now, the Zohar says, ma yivi eha. It should say, the pasuk says Yivieha Eitz Trumas Hashem. Now the word Yivieha literally means that you will bring her. What does that mean? From here we learn a secret about prayer. A man who has fear of his creator, and he with intent directs his heart and his desire in his prayer, asking tikuna de la'ela, he will cause a correction in the celestial sphere, kamado kimna, as we've already explained. See, B'Kadmesa, initially he starts b'shirin v'sishbachan. He starts with songs and praises, that's Psukah de Zimrei, until Yishtabach. The Ka'amrin Malachin Ilan, these are praises that are said by the celestial angels la'ela, above, when they say praise. Ubahu Sidur de Sushbachon, the Ka'amri Yisrael Lasata, and this arrangement of Psukah de Zimrei that Klal Yisrael says below, Iu Kishitas Garma, it causes adornment for the Shechina Kedosha, v'istakonas b'tikuna, and it prepares her with her adornments as the Shechina is getting ready to meet Kutsha Barichu, to meet, and that of course is that the Shechina, which is the Midah of Malchus, is getting ready to meet Kutsha Barichu, the Bechina of Zer Anpin. So, Ki'itza, like a woman, shitas l'bayla, like a woman who adorns herself for her husband. Ubesidur ditzloisa, and then after we finish the tefillah of Psukah de Zimrei until Yishtabach, Ubesidura ditzloisa, and the arrangement of the prayers, Bahu tikuna ditzloisa de miyushav, with the arrangement that we say, which is called the tefillah miyushav, which is from Yotzer Ar until Gal Yisrael, the Birchas Kriyashma and Kriyashma, Askinu ulem toha, we fashion the Shiva Naras, the 7 maidens that accompany the Shechina as she's getting ready to greet Kutsha Barichu, the Chol Inun Dila, and all of the prerequisites. Umiskashken Kol Inun Ba'ada, and they adorn themselves, her retinue that is with her. Lebasar de Istokan Kola B'Istadru, as while we've said the Birchas Kriyashma and Kriyashma, where all of this gets arranged, Kadmatu le'emes v'yatzev, when we arrive at emes v'yatzev, kidein kolo mistakna iru v'ulemta, it's all prepared, she, the Shechina Kedosha, and the Shivas Na'iris HaRa'is L'asei S'la Bebeis HaMalchus, ad demata l'Gal Yisrael, until we arrive at Gal Yisrael, kidein itzrach l'meikim kula al kiyumayu, we all have to get up from our place. That's what we by Tilais Kel Elyon we rise. Begin the Kad Barnash Matil Emes V'Yatzev, when a person reaches Emes V'Yatzev. V'Kola is stacking, and everything is fashioned for the Shechina. Olem Ta not Lila. The maidens escort the Shechina Kedosha. V'I Nitilas Garma L'Gabi Malki La. She takes herself, and that's of course the Midah of Malchus, to greet Kutsha Barichu, which is the Midah of Zer Anpin. Kavan the Matal Gal Yisrael, Kedain Malka Kadisha La Netel B'Dargai, the Kutsha Barichu, the celestial Kutsha Barichu, goes on his levels, Menofik L'Kabla La, and comes to greet the Shechina, V'Anan Mikami Malki La Ba'inun L'Makaima, and we before the celestial king, we get up, Al Kiyuma Be'emsa Bara'ada, in awe and in trembling. Now he explains the first 3 brachas of Shemona Esrei. Hashem, the Kutsha Barichu, extends his right to the Shechina, which is the Midah of Chesed, so that's the bracha of Magen Avraham. Olabasa Smolei, the Shavuot Chais Reishi, he takes its left and puts it under the head of the Shechina. That's the bracha of Mechai Mesim, the bracha of Yitzchak, the bracha of Gevura. Olabasa is Chaptu Travay Kechadav Nishiku, and then the Shechina and Kutsha Barichu embrace with a kiss, and that's the bracha of Ata Kaddish. The Ilan Inun Tlas Kadmesa. Those are the 3 first brachas of Shemona Esrei. A person has to direct his heart and his will, and to pay attention to all of these corrections and arrangements of davening. And he has his mouth, his heart, and his will as one. Now, after there is this union of Kutsha Berichu Ushchinte, that's a tremendous Eis Ratzon, and therefore we have the next 12 brachas where we ask the Shechina, Hashtan Malki Lo Matunisa, and now that the Kutsha Berichu and his matron and the Shechina, Inon Bechibura, they are joined, Bechedva, Beinon Neshikan, with happiness, with this kiss. Man de itzrich lemishel she'elton yishel. Whoever needs to ask a request should ask. It's a time of favor. Now, came the show barnash she'ultoy mikami malko matronisa. After the person asked his requests before the Kutsha Berichu Shchinte, the 12 middle brachas, Kedain Yisakin Garmei Berusei V'Libei, he should prepare himself with desire and heart, L'slas Acharonin, for the last 3 brachas. Now, the last 3 brachas represent the time where the Shechina and the Kutsha Berichu have such a union that it's hidden from us. Le'isara, to stir ourselves with chedva de tmiru, the hidden joy. Da me'ilan tlas, from these 3 brachas, is borka b'dveike kusa achara. It's a other type of union between the Shechina and Kutsha Berichu. V'yisakim barnosh k'hamei l'meipik mikama. We got to get out of there. Ula'anochelon b'chedva geniza de'ilan tlas, and to leave the Shechina from the hidden joy of these last 3 brachas. The imkol, the hey reusa, the isparchan tatoi, and with it, it should be his will that blessing should animate to below. Me'inon birchan, from these blessings, the chedva tmira, the hidden happiness. That's why we ask Hashem to give us the or panecha. Then afterwards, we then do tachnon, which is we lie down as if we're dead to be meiser nefesh to the Rebbeinu Shalom. We fall down on our face. To be meiser nefesh to Hashem. It says it in the upper realm, when there is such a union, Hashem collects spirits and ruchais. So we offer ourselves to offer ourselves with mysterious nefesh, while he takes the union of the Shechina and Kutsha Berichu, takes the spirits and souls. At that time there's a perfect bond of life with him as is proper. And now we do the Musar. The Musar teaches us the importance of fasting. Moshe Rabbeinu did not merit to get the Torah until he didn't eat 40 days and 40 nights. Nor did Eliyahu to go up a Sa'ara above until he fasted 40 days and 40 nights. And Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Kiva, and Rabbi Shmuel did not merit to the wisdom and the prophecy on the Pardes, when they managed to go to Pardes, which is a type of paradise, until they fasted many days, with all types of affliction and separation. This is interesting. And Shlomo HaMelech did not merit the wisdom of Vayakheil mikol Adam, being wiser than all men, until he fasted 40 days and 40 nights. We know that because Mishlei starts out with a big mem. The mem of the beginning of Mishlei, written by Shlomo, had a big mem to indicate that he fasted 40 fasts. Reb Shimon bar Yochai told Reb Pinchas ben Yair, Kadchazia de Gufei Malia Chaludin, B'tzeisem in Amara. Reb Pinchas ben Yair was so upset that he saw that Reb Shimon bar Yochai's body was so full of sores when he came out of the cave. So Reb Shimon bar Yochai said, if you didn't see me with this suffering, I wouldn't have all this knowledge. And finally, we now go to the Rambam. The Rambam tells us, after we explain that the Anshe Knesset G'dayla made Shachris and Mincha and Musaf, They also, Shachris and Mincha, connected the Tamid Shel Shachris and the Tamid Shel Bein HaArbayim. V'chein iskinu she'adam mispal tefillah achas b'layla. They also enacted a tefillah in the night called Mariv. Sharei vorei Tamid Shel Bein HaArbayim, because the limbs of the Tamid of the afternoon, misaklin v'holchin kol halayla, is digested on the Mizbeach the whole night. Shenemar, hi ha'olam moikdal Mizbeach kol halayla. Kenyan Shenemar Erev Vayakheil v'tzarayim, both in the evening and morning and in the afternoon, or sicha, you should talk, ve'ema, and you should cry out, vayishmu koli. So 3 times. Ve'im tefillas arvis chayva, tefillah of the arvis is not a chayva, ketfil shachas u'mincha, because haktor seibar mutarim is not a chayva. Vafal became no good Kol Yisrael, but Kol Mekayim Yisrael Sayim. Even so, Klal Yisrael, knowing in all the places of their dwellings, l'spal arvis, to daven arv, kiblu aleim ketfilas chayva, and they accepted upon themselves like a chayva. V'chein tiknu tefillah achar tefillas hamincha, samach l'shkiyas hachama, v'yom hatanis bilvad. They made another tefillah near the setting of the sun, on a tanis like Yom Kippur or on a tanis Geshamim, kedei lahoisif tchino bakasha mipnei atanis, to add supplication and request because of a tanis. V'zui atfila nikris tfilas nila. It's called nila k'layma ninulu shari shemayim. The gates of heaven are being closed, ba'ad hashemish, with the setting of the sun, v'nistera, and is hidden. L'fi she'em mispal loisa el samach l'shkiyas hacham. It's said near the time of the ni'ilah. Nimtzu at tefillas b'chol yom shalosh. The tefillas every day is 3. Shachas mincha marv, arvis v'shachas mincha. Or b'shabbos is u'b'mayadim, there's an added one. Or b'rashi chodashim arba, because we add musaf shal shal kol yom. Or tefillas hamisafim. Or b'yom ha'kippurim, and on Yom Kippur where there's added nila chamesh arba elu, the shachas mincha marv and musaf, and utfilas nila. We want to thank you all for joining us and wish you a wonderful day.